Hi, everybody. My name is Vimala Pwanaswamy, and I'm the Associate Director for MIT Bootcamps. We're running this webinar, this e-seminar today with myself. I believe Erdine Beshimov, who's the founder of MIT Bootcamps, will be joining us a little bit later. And we have two alumni of the program, Nidhi Sharma and David Anderton. And we're all here to tell you a little bit about the bootcamp and then answer any questions that you might have. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and give a little bit of a background. And then Nidhi and David will talk about their experience with the bootcamp, and then we'll open it up to everybody for any questions that you might have. MIT Bootcamps is a program from the Vice President of Open Learning's office here at MIT. And it's really a way for MIT to take MIT everywhere. So that means it's a blended learning program, and with a combination of the online courses and an in-person residential component, we're able to take the MIT educational experience to parts of the world and to people who might not have the opportunity to come to MIT for a degree program or for other educational experiences. So the bootcamp is really a blended learning experience, which means it starts with an online component, and then there's a 1-week residential program where you work with MIT faculty, coaches, and one another. And then Nidhi and David can tell you a little bit later about how the bootcamp journey continues even after the bootcamp. But with the classes, you can actually, if you go to our website, you'll be able to find the MOOCs. There are 4 of them that are focused on entrepreneurship and innovation. And these are all courses that are freely available online. You can also take a verified course, meaning you'll receive a verified certificate for it. And these are all classes that are taught by MIT faculty. User innovation is by Eric von Hippel, who's a professor here in the economics department and at Sloan. Bill Ellett is the managing director for the Martin Trust Center, and he's also a professor at Sloan. And he leads Entrepreneurship 101, 102, and 103, which are all available online. These are based on courses that they teach on campus, but they're designed for online learning. So then once you take the online courses, and it's not imperative that you take the online classes before you apply. It's just important that you go through the content before you actually attend the bootcamp. And in that 1-week period, it's really an opportunity to learn, practice, and receive real-time feedback from MIT faculty and coaches. And all of our coaches are MIT trained, meaning they're either graduates of MIT or they're graduates of the bootcamp program itself. And so the innovation principles that we go through during the bootcamp are identifying a significant innovation opportunity. So this could be a problem or some other unmet need in the market. And we go through this in a very systematic way. You understand who your opportunity stakeholders are. So there are the people who are affected by the problem or the people who are not able to take advantage of the solution. There's the customer, there's the payer. And we talk about who all these different players are and how they relate to the opportunity in different ways, and how, as a venture, you interact with each of them. Then thirdly, you conceptualize what the solution is and within the stakeholder journey. So how does the solution fit into how the customer would find out about the problem, find out about the solution, and what is the discovery process, and how do they make that decision? Oftentimes, it's not just a single person making a decision, so you understand what is both the decision-making unit and the decision-making process, which in certain businesses or institutions can actually be quite a complex process. And then finally, we talk about, is the solution viable? So is it financially viable? Is it the right time for this product? Who is the payer and how much are they willing to pay for it? Are people willing to invest? So there are a lot of things that, a new venture coming to market, there are a lot of factors that go into it. So it's the idea, the solution, the team, but timing can also be significant. So this is where you understand, do all those pieces fit together to actually make this the right time to launch whatever, whatever solution I'm talking about. And we say that this is an innovation and entrepreneurship bootcamp. So yes, we're looking at startups, so for-profit businesses, but really the innovation journey is similar, whether you're coming from a nonprofit or social enterprise background. This is really about specifying a problem and understanding the people who are affected by it and finding the right solution. So we see this as an opportunity for traditional startups, for social innovators, for people who are learning, who are innovation educators, for corporate innovators, and really anyone who's interested in the innovation process. And while you're learning these core innovation principles, you're actually doing this on a team. So in the beginning, you'll select your own team. You'll learn about team design, so who should be on my team. You'll work with your teammates. You'll learn about conflict and conflict resolution, and you'll get to practice leadership as the CEO for a day. And then finally, at the end of the boot camp, on the final day, it's demo day, where you actually get to pitch your solution. And throughout the week, you'll be learning about effective communication. And that final day is really the way for you to understand how to communicate your solution to an audience with influence. And as we talked about here, Erdine has just joined us.
Hey guys, thank you so much for being here. I'm so sorry I'm late. I was just finishing up a seminar. It started a little late because of technical problems, and so it ended a little late. But I'm here, I'm with you, and excited to dive in.
So the boot camps are taught by MIT faculty, and the project work is guided by MIT trained coaches. So we talked about Bill, who's actually the MIT faculty lead for Entrepreneurship 101, 102, and 103. He'll be in Brisbane again. And you know, I think Nidhi and David can probably talk about their experience working with him and learning from him. Erdine and myself will also be there. We have 7 coaches, 5 of who are listed up here. Luciano is an alumni of the boot camp and is working on a precision agriculture and consulting services company in Brazil. Inga is also an alumni of the boot camp, and she's an Olympic athlete, a javelin thrower, and works with executives, athletes on really how to mentally prepare for these really difficult and arduous situations. And she talks about how the preparation for being a top-notch athlete is not so dissimilar from being an entrepreneur, and having that mental toughness and learning perseverance, how that can really translate from one to the other. Lindsay Stradley and Ani Vallabhaneni, they're the founders of Sanergy, which is a sanitation company in Kenya. They're also MIT Sloan graduates, along with Nathan Trujillo, who is he's a MIT Sloan graduate and a PhD from the chemical engineering department at MIT as well, and an expert in IP. A lot of you will have seen his e-seminar that he did a couple weeks ago. We have 2 other coaches, Vanessa Green and Priyanka Bakaya, who are not listed on here, but you'll find out more information about them on our website shortly. Vanessa, also an MIT Sloan grad, who started a company that looks at how to reduce the size of the chargers that we have in our phones. It's really an energy-focused company. She's successfully raised $20 million for her company in Silicon Valley after graduation. She's now moved on to other things, and she's really looking forward to coming and sharing her experiences in February. And finally, Priyanka Bakaya is another MIT Sloan grad who's started an energy company focused on taking plastic waste and converting it to energy. So she's launched this company in the US, in Utah. She's looking to expand into Canada and Australia as well. She's also from Australia, so has quite a bit of experience in business development and launching ventures in the US, in India, and in Australia. So the schedule, for those of you who've talked to other people, you know that the schedule is quite intense. essentially it's a semester's worth of learning and project work in a week. The focus is really working on teams and working on a project and getting through all of it in 1 week. As we mentioned, everyone gets the opportunity to be a CEO for a day. You're working with the coaches almost, nonstop. There's no, if you look down on the schedule, it's a little bit hard to see, but it says deliverables are due by 3 a.m. And we do that because if we didn't put a deadline, then people would continue working all night. And the coaches are generally there with you until those deliverables are due each night. So this is the opportunity for you to really push yourself beyond what you might have done previously. So we started 3 short years ago. We've had 6 open enrollment boot camps since then, focused on entrepreneurship and innovation, as well as 1 IoT boot camp. We have close to 500 alumni, and I really hope David and Nidhi talk a little bit more about their experience of being alumni and of what that community looks like. We have people from over 70 countries. Typically at each boot camp, we have people from anywhere from 20 to 35 countries represented. So this is a real opportunity to get to know a diverse group of people who are just as passionate about you, about solving global challenges. What I find to be really amazing is that in just 3 short years, Bootcamp alumni have raised close to $50 million for their ventures. This is in equity funding, it's in grants, it's in competitions and different prizes. So it's amazing to have seen this success. So here is the website for you to learn more about the program and to find the application as well. I'm now going to hand it over to Nidhi and David, and they're going to tell you a little bit about their experience during the boot camp and post boot camp.
Hey everyone, it's so great to meet you all today, and it's so exciting to know that you're interested in applying to or finding out more about the boot camps. So yeah, a little bit about my journey and how I came across the boot camp in the first place. So I found out I was doing some of those online courses that Vimala mentioned in Entrepreneurship 101, and finding out that these are lessons that I had experienced the hard way, perhaps, and not all of them. So I was hopeful and excited to see how perhaps I could avoid some more mistakes and benefit from the learning of others, especially around the idea of knowing about who your customer was. And I think, as Vimala was talking about, who are the stakeholders who are involved in finding out if what you're doing is viable or not. And so I heard about the first boot camp, and I was super excited to get to meet the faculty and the people who are involved, and also find a community of other people who had shared experiences with myself. So this was super exciting, and Bill was incredible to meet. You said speak a little bit about Bill. So it was kind of a bit bizarre to meet someone who I'd just been watching the videos of. Is kind of like a bit of a pop star, I think, within the community, which is slightly awkward to say about academic faculty, but it was kind of true. This was someone who had guided us through and talked to us about some of the difficulties of his professional experience and some of the products he had been developing, and also witnessed students developing. And so it was great to be able to finally speak to directly and kind of share experiences with Bill and get his insight and feedback on my particular approach or ideas. For instance, at the time I was trying to arrange an equity deal with a company I was founding at the time, which unfortunately went nowhere, but I was given terms that were totally unrealistic, that would actually have scuppered the company in raising its first round of funding. So just very simple and direct insights like that, which are hard to get that specificity when it's a more generalized or online experience, were there in the boot camp. So that was kind of my first initial experiences. Yeah.
Thanks, David, for such an insightful account. To follow up on that, I attended the Global Entrepreneurship Bootcamp as a part of Class 4, which happened last year at MIT. So I am a trained engineer, and I was running my startup at that time. And I, as an engineer, I really know how to make things. But what I learned at the boot camp was how to make things for real people. Um, so the boot camp, it helped me fill my own skill gap in business, in entrepreneurship, and in design thinking as well. It put me in touch with wonderful people all across the world who are really inspiring, and I cannot really express, uh, the wealth of the people wealth that I gained, in addition to what all I was anyway supposed to learn through the boot camp. So I mean, I can proudly say that right now I have family in each and every country all across the world. So at the end of the boot camp, the outcome is so incredible that if you have any ideas to talk about, you will have someone to talk to, about those ideas any point of the day, and so so after the boot camp, after going back to India, um, I applied the bootcamp learnings to my own startup, and I quickly realized, for the good, for the better, that my startup was making things that I really liked, and it was also keeping me afloat financially, but it wasn't scalable. There were paying customers, but they were not paying me enough to scale. This is a very difficult situation, and it takes a lot of you know it takes a lot of understanding to realize that what you're doing, although it's showing up in your balance sheets as profits maybe, but it would be difficult to justify those profits and those numbers in a few years. So I decided to because of my experience at MIT, I really knew, when I came here, that this is the place I want to be at. So I quickly, looked up programs that I was interested in. I applied to MIT IDM, which is MIT Integrated Design and Management Program, which teaches the nuances of business, design, and technology. I applied to that. The bootcamps team really helped me, in making a good case, good fit for that program. And, I got through. And I just joined this August, and it has been wonderful to, be a part of the boot camp since the last 1 year, and it has enriched me on a professional as well as a personal level, and I think that is what makes it different than most of the other things going around.
I have to agree with you, Nidhi, about that idea of like exposure to experience. And one of the things I was thinking was around the fact that you truly feel like a global citizen, in terms of, people who are all around the world, and they can share their experiences and their insight with you. And not only that insight, but also their kind of professional and personal skills. You have this humongous network of, if I want to improve my personal, presentation or speaking, or maybe I want to learn something about AI or farming or drone construction, there's someone in the network who has that insight, and people are more than willing to connect with each other and share those experiences, meet up in person, or even just online. So I think that's a really incredible value that we've gained. Yeah.
So both of you are now actually MIT students. I mean, Nidhi talked a little bit about now, just starting at IDM just a couple of months ago, 1 year after doing the boot camp. David, can you talk a little bit about what you've done since the boot camp? Because you've actually had quite a bit of involvement with MIT, and now are also a student here.
Sure, yeah, that's right. So I think one of the huge values that I derived from the boot camp was I was always very curious about like what the U.S. education system was like, and you have like all of these movies, like say Animal House, I don't know if Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but you kind of like construct your own mental image of what a U.S. education is like in the college system. And I found that the boot camp was a great way to get insight onto how people worked in academia, the kind of attitudes more generally, but also what MIT stood for, and its desire to see progress and innovation, and to have like a very meritocratic approach to what you do. So anyway, back to post bootcamp, I had the real pleasure and great opportunity to work with you guys on developing some of your in-house software and the website, and then went on to work with the Media Lab on a research project, which was to do with annotating live streams of political protests. So like kind of a civic engagement project. And we attempted to spin that out into a company. We went through an accelerator here at MIT and raised some like initial seed funding, and ended up focusing on like developing annotation of live video and sport. Earlier this year, I actually decided to move on from the company, and found out a couple of days later I'd been admitted to the Media Lab. So there was these 2 days of total, no idea what was happening. So very, very fortunate to find that direction so quickly. And I was super excited. I was like jumping around the streets like, woo! And so now I'm here, and what I'm focusing on at the moment is using machine learning and like neural networks to understand the content of video. So still staying in the video space. And my dream, I think, with that research is to make the perfect spoiler movies for every movie that's ever existed, right? So to find the salient moments in each film and be able to automatically construct like a spoiler that is so satisfying that you know the entire movie within 30 seconds. So I think that's it's a little bit of a pipe dream at the moment. There's a lot of challenges, but we're starting off with like detecting like emotions in the face and the posture, and of course the audio levels, and trying to find out like what makes a salient moment in a video. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what's happening today.
And so what have you seen? So the boot camp for both of you was a little bit of a taste of what MIT is like. So what were the things about the boot camp that really attracted you to MIT and to want to be, to want to become students here?
Do you want to start?
Yeah. So one of the most attractive things which MIT, which I had a glimpse of during the boot camp, was the wealth of knowledge that everyone is carrying around. So, it's every day, it's an everyday thing at MIT that you would be walking just with a Nobel laureate maybe, and you would not even know. So, so for example, Professor Bill Ole, I mean, he is a wealth of what he teaches. I mean, he's so good at it. And I could only assume, we had a few guest faculty, speaking at the bootcamp as well. And I could see the quality of the staff or the faculty here. And it really makes you very, very driven to learn more from people like them. In addition, people who make it to a place like MIT, they themselves as students, they have a wealth of experience to talk about, to share about. And it's like, gaining from the experience of maybe 100 years in your classroom. So I think that is, it's really important. It's just like machine learning where you learn from people, right? So I think it is very important for me personally to have a very enriching experience in the classroom, and not just from the people who are teaching, but from the people who are included, as me. So that, and of course the entire MIT ecosystem is so intense that it's so motivating that it makes you the best version of you. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I think I would like add on to that, Nidhi. Like in terms of you mentioning the 100 years of experience, or walking down corridors with laureates, coincidentally, and I sometimes find that I spot someone, I'm like, oh, let me just like, maybe listen in. What are they talking about? Maybe there's something insightful going on in Joe Ito's mind today. Who knows, as he's going to get coffee? Not in a weird way, of course. But I think it's one of the things that's interesting is that I think the bootcamp is great for personal development in terms of self-confidence. And by what I mean by that is that you probably when you're applying, you're having some doubts like, will I get in? Okay, you get in, fantastic, super excited, and then you turn up the first day and you meet everyone and you're like, this was an accident. How long is it before people discover that I shouldn't be here and I'm on my plane back to where I came from, right? And it was interesting because I kind of, I've shared or heard similar experiences from other boot campers as well around that, like kind of self-doubt about like, why am I here? And actually, in the first few weeks of being at the Media Lab, they sent out an email to everyone saying, "It is not a mistake, you are here." And so I kind of think that's a huge thing I think about being at MIT is being able to be surrounded by just incredibly excellent people, but realize that, you're also here for a reason. And there's a purpose for you being here and being involved. And it's not an accident that, you made it to the boot camp or you've made it to MIT. Okay, even though a lot of people can't reflect upon their own contributions at that point, there is something that you're doing. You'll figure it out eventually, but there's something that you're doing that is worthwhile and adds a value to the community. And I think that's one of the things the boot camp trains you to do is to feel comfortable in very uncomfortable situations, whether that's being surrounded by people who are doing crazy stuff with space technology and you're just doing an app for the iPhone and you're like, oh, what am I doing? Does it have any meaning? Or if that's like in an intense discussion at 4 a.m. in the morning where you can't seem to get anything sorted with your team, starting to feel comfortable and confident and understand the ways to handle these situations. I think that's what bootcamp is all about. So,
can you talk about some of those experiences? Because the bootcamp, it really does simulate a lot of the experiences that a startup entrepreneur faces in their first 2 to 3 years. So obviously you're not going to get all of the experiences all in 1 week, but you do get to touch on them. Can you talk about some of the ones that were that were new to each of you in that week?
Yeah, so my team incidentally consisted of 7 individuals from all from the different continents, and it was it was a kind of cultural shock. It was the first international experience I ever had, and at one point of time when we were just beginning, it was even difficult for each of us to understand each other's accents. So
where were your teammates from?
Yeah, so we were from Mexico, Guatemala, India, Singapore, Kenya, Cambodia, if I'm not missing anything. Yeah. So it was incredible that it was very funny that one of the solutions that we devised was that when we were talking about something really important, we would write that out on the whiteboard with markers. So of course it slowed down the process, but we made sure that everyone understood what we were trying to say. But yeah, going through those 3, 4, 5 days, we pivoted a lot. And when you pivot, when you're working together with people who really don't know anything about, there is a margin of conflict. You can run into conflicts. Someone could feel left out, they could withdraw, right? And it's really important to keep everyone together. So yeah, it helped all of us build our people skills, our startup skills, our soft skills, and we really pulled through those 6 days and emerged victorious. We pivoted a lot. I remember, just hardly a day before our final presentation was due, we pivoted. And I was actually just taking a small nap at one of the couches that was set up in our team room. And Erdin came in and he was speaking to our team. And I just woke up out of the noise that he was creating. And, he just told me, he played a prank. He told me, okay, Nidhi, you have again pivoted. And we were like 4 or 5 hours before the, presentation. And I said, okay, really? Okay, let's now again start working on our stuff. So, that is the mode you are working in when you're in the boot camp. It's actually an army. It's a war-like situation and you got to win.
Yeah. And so, Nidhi, what are some of the lessons that you took out of that from working on a diverse team and some of those time pressures? And, at the end, you were like, okay, 4 or 5 hours, whatever, it's still gonna happen. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the learnings that you took from that experience that with you now?
Yeah, so first, I never give in to pressure now. I try not to. Second, I think diversity is really important. It brings in a lot of perspectives in your team. So it's actually insane if you are trying to do the next startup with the friend you have grown up with and the friend you have studied with, right? So it's really incredible that you have people on your team who can think differently, who can discuss, who can bring about the different viewpoints looking at the same thing. It's very important to discuss every aspect, and then the team unites on one of the ways going forward. So this is something that I really value, and it's been, you know, it's been reinforced into me here at the MIT IDM program as well. So these are some things that I really value, and I'll be probably carrying them throughout my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. David, how about you? Did you have talk about some of the experiences that you faced during the boot camp that were new?
Sure. Yeah, I think, I mean, where to start? There's such a wealth of things that you experience and situations you encounter. It takes, I mean, I think I'm still unpacking some of the lessons from the boot camp 3 years ago. So yeah, I think the first time experience, I think it really must be probably around those differing opinions and having respect for other team members and their opinions, even though they might be wrong. Sorry, I mean different from your own. And I think that's kind of the point, right? It's being able to be respectful under pressure, and when the moments become intense. Now, and maybe a good an analogy for this is I have Netflix on in the evening, and there's Canada's Worst Handyman on at the moment, and they have this part of the show where these couples try to build things together, and they're absolutely useless. They end up start swearing at each other and like going crazy, and it's like, how do you not lose your cool when the heat is on? You know, when you've only got a few hours left to do something and to finalize the project ready to be demoed. And someone keeps saying this idea that you think is so off piece that it's just making you more and more frustrated. So how do you kind of like relate these different opinions and perspectives back to something that is cohesive? And I think to talk about that a bit more specifically, I feel like it always comes down to this idea of like opinions over like experience or fact. And what you find, or what I found, you get a lot of kind of frustration and conflict building when people are just saying like, oh, I think this will work, or I think that will work, or these people think this, or these people think that, and they experience that problem, rather than actually going out and doing that primary market research and speaking to the people who actually experience the problem directly. So I think it's like, okay, we've all, said our little, few cents on what we think the problem is. Now let's actually just go back and speak to the people who are actually experiencing it. And that should be the thing that leads us forward. And I think that was a good experience for me. It's like, okay, so we've all got our egos, we've all got our ideas, but how are we going to resolve this? Oh, we're going to resolve it by actually talking to people who are facing this issue or experiencing this problem. And that's a great way to build cohesiveness, because once everybody, if we have this idea that, say diabetics face this particular issue, if we don't go speak to someone who is day to day, doing this routine to try and manage this problem, who are we to know or to say what is true? And when you hear it from the proverbial horse's mouth, that nobody can deny, and it all unites you. So that was one of my key experiences. Primary market research brings teams together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so a lot of what we just talked about was the team aspect and diversity and conflict. But David, you just touched on one of the innovation principles that are taught during the boot camp, primary market research. I know both of you have taken other courses or had other entrepreneurship and innovation classes or workshops that you've been to. Can you talk a little bit about what was different about the boot camp?
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the major differences is this emphasis on methodology. And Bill's incredible, if not seminal work on this in the 24 steps I feel it's like a routine and a plan that know is good for you, but you just kind of don't want don't want to do. You know, you're always trying to find like little shortcuts or ways to accelerate your business, or the innovation that you're doing while skipping these steps. I think, and that kind of pulls back to what I was saying before about primary market research, is this is a step that everybody loves to skip. You know, not like, for some reason we've all got, not everybody, but it seems like most people have like an anxiety to pick up the phone and speak to people. Maybe this is because you know, of the iPhone and like all these personal devices and Bose headphones, but we just don't like engaging in conversation with people who we're not familiar with. And what is interesting, like my experience as a coach as well in Brisbane, was that you have a team, you're like, okay, we want to find out this, and then they want to do this research, and then they don't do the research that, oh yeah, and we found out that. You're like, so what happened to the primary market research? Oh yeah, you know, we kind of, you know, we searched on the web. It's like, no, call people up, speak to people directly, find people on the street. And I think that's one of the things the 24 steps do, is they set out this systematic approach to kind of processing an idea and validating if it's something worth pursuing in terms of the size of the market, but also, you know, potentially possible to pursue if it even is a problem that you're trying to address with a specific technology or innovation. And yeah, I think that's one of the key takeaways is, and also for me being reflective, is after learning the 24 steps, I started to understand or see issues in previous attempts I made and go, oh, that's because I messed up step 5, or, you know, that's because I didn't look at the market segmentation. And then I also started to notice being able to like kind of intuitively apply the framework to other people as well, and other people's businesses, you know. So you're like, oh, why did that business fail that was, you know, on CNN or so on? Oh, it's because of XYZ, or they missed out, you know, one of the steps. So it becomes like this framework to understanding business and innovation more broadly. What was your experience?
Well, I think that it is really path-breaking that Bill talks of entrepreneurship as a science, which he disintegrates into 24 steps. It really resonates with the engineer in me. And it's really good that, you know, it's really different that someone, because I was used to people talking about entrepreneurship being in your genes, being a part of who you are born with, you know, those things. So it's really different that someone talks about entrepreneurship as a skill that can be learned. And it's really empowering. More than that, I think the difference between the bootcamp experience and the regular MOOC is that you learn a lot when you come together in a classroom setting. It's the fact that you learn not just from the content, but from the experiences of people around you. And when you see that the other people in your class are willing to, you know, go the next mile, it motivates you to, you know, put in twice as much effort as what you might be willing to. So I think it brings the best in you.
For sure. I think that kind of collective shared experience during the bootcamp is something that really drives people forward. And you see it, you know, when you're walking around and it's the early hours of the morning, the day before the demo, and people would just seem more energetic than they were on the first day. You're like, what's going on? It's like, you're like, where's the Red Bull? You know, and there doesn't seem to be that much around. So what can explain this like newfound energy and dynamism and like this happiness that is kind of like overwhelming? It's really exciting.
So we're starting to get in some questions from people who are on the webinar. And both of you have touched on this a little bit, but as we talked about, the bootcamp is more than just 1 week. It really starts with the online courses, then there is the in-person bootcamp, but then the journey is longer than that. You two are both active alumni. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like being an alumni of the bootcamp and what that community is like?
So I think, again, it's one of those very broad experiences and it's very hard to put into words specifically, but I'll do my best. I think, firstly, being an alumni is almost like a little bit of a badge of honor. You made it through, you've got through this super intensive week. But what's been interesting for me is that goes beyond the cohort, right? So you've got your own individual cohort, and at the start of the week, maybe you know a couple of people closely, and towards the end of the week, you probably have got to met 40, 50 people on personal terms where you can have serious conversations about difficult situations you're either facing in the business or in future ideas or thoughts you're having, and have honest discussions. So that's kind of within your own cohort. But also, when you step out and you realize you've got these now, which is incredible, over 500 people who have been to a boot camp, you also have this common connection with them. And I find it's often like speaking to an old friend. Like you have these years that have gone by, maybe 5-10 years, and you haven't spoken, and then all of a sudden the fire like reignites, just like it was when you used to hang out. And I find that's what happens when you speak to graduates of other bootcamp cohorts. Is it's almost like you've known them all along, and the warmth and the depth in which you interact is just it's incredible. I've never seen any parallel. So I think that for me is like one of the experiences of being alumni. It's not just this LinkedIn network of friends where if you've got an issue, you're like, oh man, I really need to incorporate AI because it's a cool term and I want my startup to get funding, and go on a LinkedIn search. That's not what it is at all. It's so much more. It's almost like an extended family, where you can have honest and sincere discussions with each other, and enjoy reflecting on shared experience.
So I get asked this question a lot of times when I'm talking to people who are looking forward to apply to the boot camps, that what are the things that that one can possibly expect out of a boot camp. And to be very honest, in addition to what David said, it depends actually on the person attending that boot camp. It is up to you if you want to really continue that bond with your cohort as well as with the alumni network. It is up to you if you want to tap into the wealth of knowledge and experiences and contacts of that network. That said, I think boot camps, they're a very great opportunity to address your skill gap, whatever you might have, and get to be a part of a great network which exists throughout the world, and possibly take your venture to the next level. It puts you in touch with a lot of people who are again in touch with a lot of people. So it's like a tree of networks. And so for me, I hardly knew anyone out of my own little pond. I was a frog in a small pond. So before the boot camp, but now I know a lot of people. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. Like in terms of when you're referencing, you're a frog in your own pond, and I think that was something I also felt, was that you have this situation that you're in your business, and like the only other people you seem to be able to meet are people who are in similar situations to you, right? And you're all facing the same problem, and you're trying to like figure it out, but you're kind of like a little bit blind to where the opportunities are to progress. And what I found with the bootcamp is you immediately meet people at every stage, right? So you find there are people who, surprising to you, of like before where you are, and you can offer them advice and counsel as to what they could possibly do, or different approaches they could take. But there's also people who are just the next step from where you are, who can give you that little catalytic piece of advice to make something progress, and like to strive through the kind of block that you're facing. And then there's people who are several steps, and there's people who, in your opinion, have made it, and you can kind of take insights from every part of the chain. So instead of, I think prior to the boot camp, you're on CNBC, you're like, reading Richard Branson's book, and you're like, oh man, like, but where are the steps? Like it all of a sudden it's like from zero to hero, and you're like, well, but what happened in the middle? And I think with the boot camp, you get exposure to people at every part of the chain or the ladder of experience who are more than happy to share those experiences and insights with you. And I thought that was something super incredible.
Can you guys talk about some of your peers from the boot camp and what they're doing now, and some of those inspirations, or who had that next step that you've been able to get advice from?
Yeah. So one of the major things I learned from the boot camp was not to have a glass ceiling to what you are thinking you could do. So there was a participant in the boot camp called, her name was Zara. She came from Azerbaijan, and this tiny little girl would, she had accomplished so many things that I would actually look at her profile and then look at her and try to establish that connection. Okay, is this the girl, who has done so many things, so many wonderful things? I didn't really so because the boot camp was very intense in its own might, and she was not on my team. I didn't really get several hours to talk with her about her journey, but it was enough to for her to inspire and motivate, and for me to break my own glass ceilings. Other than that, I think there were people in my cohort who had so there was a guy, so he was a farmer and he had his visa rejected, and he didn't have so he had to apply from a neighboring country or a state, and then he had to travel, and he didn't have the money to travel to that neighboring state, so he actually worked for like 15 days to get that visa. These kinds of incredible stories, they can really keep you up at night for several hours. And these are the things that even when it doesn't happen very often, but even I feel low sometimes, and I get back to these accounts of incredible grit and these super strong individuals, and I look up to them to inspire and keep me motivated.
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of reference that as well. I think that the times when like as an entrepreneur or someone who's striving to achieve something that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, there are the ups and downs that come along with it. And I think often it's good to find guidance on what are the right decisions to make. Is it time to throw in the towel? Like, is it just something that I should push through on? And I think those prior experiences of others can provide great guidance as to that. I think in terms of the people who I think I have been inspired by I've had the great fortune of being exposed to many of the boot camps that happened. So there's countless individuals who I could reference. I think one I'll draw from the first boot camp, and I think there was this incredible example of two people in the boot camp who got some non-dilutive funding out of a competition from Verizon, and it was just incredible to see their progress and their drive to pursue something after the boot camp. My team, unfortunately, had fallen apart somewhat, but it was great to see that if you have the tenacity and the ability to keep driving forward, to get over the difficulties of when you come to the boot camp, you get this huge benefit of diversity, but one of the challenges is do you all go back home afterwards, right? And how do you maintain those connections? And these two managed to make it happen and to take this funding, and I thought that was a really incredible inspiration to see that this is the community that we're part of. These are my peers. If my peers are able to achieve this, then this isn't out of sight for any of us who are here today. And I thought that was really inspirational. And I think they've been able to share like a lot of a lot of the points on their journey with others also. So it's been an incredible experience to share in. And I think maybe that's the takeaway, is that although every boot camper has a slightly different journey, this is an experience you share in, and you get the benefit to take away from the lessons learned, or the great great moves made, this is something that is often, reshared back into the community very openly. So, yeah.
Great. So thank you both for sharing, what it's like to be an alumni and be a part of that community. A lot of the people who are on the webinar right now are in the process of applying or thinking of applying. And we've had a couple questions come up about raising money for the boot camp. And, Nidhi, when you were talking about Zara's grit and tenacity, I know you did a lot to fundraise for coming to the boot camp. And I know I've referred a lot of people to talk to you. And I know you put a lot of time and effort into that. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to raise funds for the boot camp?
Sure. I think so when I heard from Andrew that I was accepted to the boot camp, of course I was very happy. But yeah, this paying upfront for the boot camp was a major challenge. And the first thing that I went back and did, so you have to be very gritty. You have to take the first decision that you have to take is whether you are going to fight or you're going to flight. That fight and flight. This is one decision that you need to make. So in case you choose fight, you have to give in your 120% to it. So what I did was I ran a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo. I put up my story there and shared the links with everyone I knew in the community. So there's not just a financial way of contribution to such campaigns, and I really spoke to a lot of people. If they cannot really contribute, they could share it in their networks. And surprisingly, I was able to raise much more than I initially had thought. And in addition to that, I wrote to around 700 philanthropists from all over the world, customized emails to them, and really asked. I also thought about what I can offer to them, in exchange for this investment that they are making in me. So of course, the probability of people replying to you is really less, and a very few people would really take the time out to reply to you, encourage you in what you're doing, and tell you very softly that okay, I mean, we are sorry, we'll not be able to help you, but yeah, good going, great going, you're doing some awesome work, you'll be successful. It motivates you. And even if one of them, it takes just one willing individual to take you through that journey. And incidentally, I wrote to Mr. Ratan Tata, and he replied back saying that he'll be very willing to help me out through this. So things worked out in the end. Even if, as a matter of fact, even if I was not able to raise the money that I raised, I would have attended the bootcamp, because I knew that investing in yourself is a major investment in one's life. And I know that there are people spread all across the world who would give up when they are not selected for the bootcamp, or who would give up when they cannot seem to find ways to fund their education at the bootcamp. But I really want this message to be shared with them, that I think this education as well as the experiences, they are a major investment in your journey of life. So yeah, I mean, even if for me personally, I would have not been hesitant even 0.5% to pay upfront for my bootcamp experience. Yeah,
I think one of the interesting stories from our bootcamp is perhaps Siddharth, who was in India at the time of applying, and he sold his car to be able to attend the bootcamp. And I think it's interesting that these decisions are not easy, and you've got to make sure you make the right choice for yourself, and that you weigh up the value and the cost, the direct cost to yourself. But I think these decisions are often not easy, and I think what motivated me to pursue and like make these first steps after being accepted was this quote about having skin in the game that Bill talks about. Yeah. That you kind of have to have your own stake, and to show that you're willing and and going to like make the most of this opportunity. That's how I kind of looked at it. And now Siddharth is working for Microsoft in the UK, so they're doing incredible stuff there. So I mean, wow. I think he would agree, like totally paid off.
So we just have a few minutes left, and I think you guys have really inspired a lot of people on who are listening right now. We've had a couple questions about how people can get in touch with you outside of this, and if you guys provide mentoring outside of being to non-bootcamp participants. Are there any final parting words for people who are applying right now and thinking about whether they should attend?
Well, like I said, you really need to value the investments you make to yourself towards making yourself a better individual than an entrepreneur, right? Just figure it out for yourself. If, it could be people, I mean, you could be a person who really needs to fill those skill gaps, get in touch with those wonderful people. On the other hand, you could be someone who, really cannot, who doesn't really want to take the next step, building a venture or whatever. So you need to think about, so it varies case by case. So just sit back and self-reflect on whether you want to take that next step. And if you are the person, just go right, go deep dive right in.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think my parting words would probably be kind of echoing what I said earlier, which is like, if you're here today watching this webinar, or if you're on the application page and you're like wondering if you should pursue it, I think to reflect on that thought that it's not an accident that you're there. So, what has led you to that moment, to be considering this program, to be watching us on this webinar, or to be just about to fill in and hit the submit button? I think, it's not an accident that you've made it this far. So maybe just do it and and see what might happen.
Great, Nidhi, David, thank you. I'm just going to answer a couple questions about the bootcamp application process that have come up, and also allow for Andrew and Erdine to give any final parting thoughts. So we've had a couple questions come up. So the application deadline is November 1st, which is 2 days from now. And that just means you need to get round 1 in. So round 1 of the application is your background information and then your resume. So if you have that in by November 1st, then there are 4 more rounds for the application process that will happen over the following weeks. But if you're interested in applying, the important thing is to really complete round 1 by the day after tomorrow, and that ends midnight Eastern time. So midnight Boston, so really November 2nd at midnight. And the main theme of the bootcamp is on sustainability, but this is really open to anyone who's interested in entrepreneurship and innovation. You don't have to have a sustainability project or background to apply. What this means, we'll go through the same innovation principles that Nidhi and David went through, and the same team process, and same opportunities for leadership that happen at all of the boot camps. What happens is, with the sustainability focus, is that we'll have additional lectures, and all of the coaches have expertise in sustainability. Their businesses are focused on some aspect of sustainability. So you'll have that extra flavor in the boot camp. But it's not necessary to have a sustainability background in order to attend the boot camp or a sustainability project that you're working on. So now we have just a couple of minutes left. Or just 1 minute left. So I want to hand it over to Dean and to Andrew for any parting thoughts.
Good to see you again. Well, like David and like Nidhi, as an alum of the inaugural bootcamp program, it's been clear to you guys who have been following us. It's changed my life. I was I don't know. We were just reviewing the videos, Erdine. Share your opinion about how the bootcamp has changed all of our lives, that everybody who's sitting here in the room. 3 years, 4 years ago since you started, so.
Amazing journey, amazing journey. And there's very little that I can say that would supplant what the alums have said. And what the alums have said really is what matters. I will leave you with the following part in thought, and that is that we all have limitations. We all have impedances on our way to extraordinary realization of who we are and who we can be. And what is special about the bootcamp is that you will learn what some of the hidden obstacles and limitations that you have might be. And what is beautiful about the bootcamp is that it is a low risk environment to experience that and to develop a way for dealing with that. It's a low risk environment. No one in the bootcamp is going to begrudge you for limitations. You will be encouraged to overcome them. And in the process, you will get upgraded, not just as an entrepreneur, but as an individual. And that's our goal here.
Right. Well, thank you
Great.
for joining us today. And we'll hopefully see you in Brisbane, Australia.
Yep. And remember, applications, you have 2 days to get round 1 in. Thank you all.
Bye for now.
Bye.